Hi everyone, my name's Roz. Today we're going to be talking about the business benefits of cloud. And we have with us the fantastic Ben Lewis, our head of cloud here at Load Balancer with me today. Hi Ben.
Hi Roz, lovely to see you. And what a fantastic introduction, thank you.
No worries. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about your background and how you found yourself working with all things cloud today?
Yeah, sure. I've been working in the IT industry for a little over 20 years. I started my career in IT sales actually, working for what in those days was called a hosting provider. So that was an organization that ran servers and applications in our data centers for other organizations. Essentially, that was our business model. And what's quite interesting about that is that was kind of a forerunner to public cloud as we look at it today. So the evolution that we've seen from in those days, everything was physical boxes, firewalls, load balancers, servers, storage devices, everything was a physical machine. We went through a whole series of iterations where virtualization came to the fore, and then software-defined networking and all of these sorts of technologies. And now a lot of those things we see in public cloud, certainly at the infrastructure as a service layer. So I've spent most of the last 20 years working in those sorts of organizations. So I feel that I've sort of grown up with and evolved alongside cloud. So yeah. Combination of sales, service management, and dipped a toe in the water of product management along the way as well. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. So you know your stuff, basically.
Oh, careful.
So you hear a lot, I guess, about the phrase "the future being in the cloud." I think that's been said quite a lot of times, just like thrown about everywhere. And I guess what I want to really uncover today is why cloud can benefit businesses today. So would you be able to tell us in your words, like what you think those benefits are?
Yeah, I think there are innumerable benefits to deploying services in the cloud, but I think some of the big ones, the key ones, are things like speed, scale, elasticity. So I'll touch on each of those in order. So speed of deployment. I touched a moment ago on traditional models of having physical appliances in data centers. If you can imagine having to deploy services in that way, there's a lead time just waiting for servers and equipment to arrive, and then you have to deploy that, and then you have to set it all up. One of the greatest things about cloud is you can go to a web interface, log in, and immediately deploy services, whether that's at an infrastructure layer or a software layer. So you've cut down what might be days, weeks, months of lead time into minutes. So speed is a massive factor if organizations are looking to compete and get new products, services, applications to market quickly. Cloud enables them to do that far quicker than they would normally achieve themselves in-house. Now, there's a school of thought that the largest organizations with private cloud capability can deliver very similar services themselves, but in all reality, that is only available to the very largest and most sophisticated organizations. So for everyone else, cloud's a great option if you need to move quickly. The second one that I talked about was scale. So similarly, if you're restricted by your own on-premises environments, unless you happen to have data centers all over the world, it's difficult to reach international markets. And again, the largest organizations can do that themselves, but they are the minority. So another massive benefit of cloud is they typically are in all of the major markets all around the world. And so you can deploy the same services in Europe, North America, South America, Australasia, wherever you want to. So that's scale. And then elasticity, it was the third one that I mentioned, and that really is the ability to scale your IT resources up and down in line with business demand. So a very obvious and easy example to think about, and one that we're probably all familiar with these days, is if you think of a Netflix, for example, streaming video services, whatever that may be, the latest, I don't know, Game of Thrones, for example, it's probably out of date now. There we go. If you see that new episodes or new films may be released and there is a particular rush for everybody to be the first to see them, And so you can see huge spikes in demand at certain periods. Well, cloud has this sort of almost limitless resource to enable you to scale up to meet that demand, but also with the benefit of once the demand tails off, you can scale your infrastructure back down again. And that, of course, means that you're only paying for what you use. With a traditional model, you have two options. You either accept that if you go beyond a certain peak, you run out of infrastructure capacity and customers get a poor experience or no experience at all, which is not ideal, or you architect for the largest peak that you could ever anticipate hitting. You can serve all of customers all of the time, but the downside to that is you're paying for maximum peak all of the time, even though much of the time you may only need 10, 20, 30% of that capacity. So elasticity is a massive benefit for cloud, in my opinion.
Oh, that's great. So I guess do you think are some of the things that might be holding back businesses from moving to cloud? If there are any assumptions that organizations might have, what do you think your advice would be?
It's interesting, actually, because I run the risk of contradicting myself now by saying that the elasticity in those services can be really, really cost effective. There is often an assumption that cloud is cheaper, and I don't think that is always true. For some services, it may be more cost effective overall, but for others, you may actually be able to deliver an alternative or a comparable service in your own data center or in a service provider's data center. So there's often this broad brush belief that cloud is cheaper, and I don't think that is necessarily the case. That's not to say that it's not good value, because as we talked about, some of the other advantages you get in terms of speed, scale, elasticity are much harder to deliver on premise, but you pay a premium for that value. So I think cloud can be great value, but it's not always cheapest. So that's one big assumption. The other question you asked there was what might be the barriers to using cloud. Again, if you're building a brand new application today and you were delivering it out en masse to consumers, I don't know, perhaps an app that was going on a phone, you would, in most cases, choose to deploy that in the cloud for all the reasons that we've already talked about. However, if you are a long-standing organization with let's say a billing application, for example, that is used to collate customers' use of your services and then provide billing out to them on a monthly basis or whatever your billing cycle may be, if that's an older application that's not built in a cloud native fashion, sometimes those things are just hard to move to the cloud. So Amazon have a model 6Rs, which is all about migration strategies for moving applications to the cloud. I'll run through them quickly off the top of my head. There's rehost, replatform, refactor, repurpose, retire, and retain. And effectively, those are 6 different options you have for an application, and they range from do nothing, leave it where it is, to replace it with something new that is probably software as a service already built in the cloud, to some of the middle options, which are more around changing some of the code within your application or tweaking it so that it's a better fit for cloud. But the point being that even AWS, who are still, I think at this point, the largest of the public cloud providers, are saying that that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to moving workloads to the cloud. And sometimes the right answer is leave it where it is. It's just not a good fit.
So you said earlier that there's not one single approach to it. So would you be able to expand on that for us?
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of talk in the market at the moment around hybrid cloud and multi-cloud, and I guess I'll give my opinion on what those are and where they may be applicable. I think the first one, hybrid cloud, it's often used to refer to where organizations have some services and applications running in the public cloud, so the AWS, the Azure, Google Cloud, those sorts of providers, but may also have some kind of private cloud on-premises deployment as well. Now, private cloud is quite an interesting term. I think it's used for things that might just be on premises rather than truly cloud consumable. But there is this concept of hybrid cloud, which is having the ability to deploy services in the right place based on a particular application or set of services, but also having the technologies, the frameworks, and the processes in place to enable you to take advantage of different environments for different things. So that's where hybrid cloud is I think is probably the dominant model today, because most organizations are using some form of cloud service, even if it's Office 365 or the Gmail suite for productivity applications. You know, those are cloud delivered software as a service applications. So and then as we start to look at multi-cloud, this is where I think there are a number of reasons why people may pursue that. Sometimes there is a fear or a risk aversion to putting all of your eggs in one basket. If you put all of your services with Google Cloud, for example, what if, you know, service quality isn't fantastic, or prices go up, or something like that? Are you tied to one platform? I think organizations want to insulate themselves from that, so perhaps have a relationship with other cloud providers. But as often as that is true, the model that I've already talked about around one size does not fit all can also be true. So again, Google have become very well known for a lot of their analytics capability. Amazon has always been thought of as very, very developer friendly, and probably has the broadest capability in terms of add-on services. Microsoft, conversely, because it's been playing well with enterprise organizations and the whole partner ecosystem for many years, some organizations, particularly larger, more mature organizations, feel that Microsoft is just a little bit easier to work with as you take your first steps into the cloud. So when we look at things like hybrid cloud and multi-cloud, my view is, again, those sorts of deployments are being driven by that recognition that you can't say, I'm just going to put everything in AWS and the world will be great, because life just isn't quite that straightforward in all reality.